Hi,
Hello, we're part of the team of the Sangalan Institute of Management in Latin America, also known as GIMLA.
and we welcome you to the Latin American Dialogues. In this first episode, we are going to introduce you to the 2018 Brazilian elections. Brazilian democracy has been nothing short of a bumpy road, and it has been interrupted by several periods of autocratic ruling.
It's interesting to mention that barriers to universal suffrage were lifted in 1932 during the Vargas era, when women, indigenous people, and lower income classes were finally allowed to vote.
The latest coup was in 64 when a military dictatorship took power, only ending this period in 1985 when a new constitution started being discussed and approved in 88.
Since then, the Brazilians have gone to the polls 7 times to elect a president.
Re-election was introduced in 94, and so far 3 presidents have been re-elected.
But 2 presidents also have been impeached, even if Collor left before the end of the impeachment procedures.
The party that stayed in power the longest was the Workers' Party, also known as PT, between 2002 and 2016. Brazil is a federal presidential republic. As in any democracy, there is a separation of powers between the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary.
The president and the vice president, running on the same ticket, are directly elected by popular vote every 4 years. The executive is also composed by an oscillating number of ministers, currently 23, all appointed by the president.
The legislative power is divided in 2 houses, the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies, jointly forming the National Congress. They are in charge of lawmaking process and also responsible for supervising the executive, with also the right to impeach the president.
The judiciary is composed by 8 different bodies, including the Supreme Federal Court, which is the highest court of appeal and also has some of the same functions as a constitutional court. Its judges are called ministers and are appointed by the president after having been vetted by the Senate.
As Brazil is a federal state, responsibilities concerning policy making and project implementation are divided between the federal, the state, and the municipal levels. For instance, taking education as an example, the federal government is responsible for national guidelines, while the state is in charge of secondary school and municipalities for kindergarten and elementary schools. After having given you a bird's eye view on the Brazilian system, we come back to the issue of this Sunday's elections. Voting is mandatory for every Brazilian between the ages of 18 and 70.
Brazilians are going to spend a lot of time voting this weekend. In fact, they are electing the president and the vice president, all the members of the Chamber of Deputies, 54 senators, and the governors of the 26 states and the federal district.
For president, there will be 2 rounds of voting, and for senators and deputies, only 1, and they are elected in each state by a proportional system. Since there's a huge amount of people running for office this year, we will only focus on the presidential candidates.
Even so, there would be 14 candidates, but Lula was not allowed to run for office by the courts, so there are only 13.
Here you can see 6 of them, according to the recent polls, are having the best chances. But only 2 of them will reach the second round. Here you can see some of the most recent polls. Jair Bolsonaro is leading the dispute with 32%, and he's a candidate for the far right.
The runner-up candidate, Fernando Haddad from the Workers' Party, is at 21%. It's worth mentioning that it only started with a 4% approval rate at the end of August.
It's also worth mentioning that both candidates have high rejection rates, which points out to a polarization in political debates, something that is also felt on the streets.
You can learn more about the candidates' political platforms by going on our website.
In order to complement this series, we're going to be interviewing several experts on Brazilian politics, so stay tuned.